So, at the ongoing IMF World Bank meetings in Washington, D.C., the International Monetary Fund has unveiled a tepid outlook for global growth in 2025 and 2026. Global economic forecast is to slow to 3.2% in 2025 from 3.3%. Growth is projected to a 3.1% fall in 2026. IMF has more optimistic forecasts on economic growth in Nigeria. Africa's most populous nation is forecast to grow 3.9% in 2025, up from 3.4% in its prior outlook, and 4.2% for 2026, up from 3.2% in its prior outlook. Also, still focused on Nigeria, the Central Bank of Nigeria held a listening session with Nigeria's top fintech firms in Washington, D.C. at the ongoing IMF World Bank meetings. The closed-door session was titled Shaping the Future of Fintech in Nigeria, Innovation, Inclusion, and Integrity. Arise Business Correspondent Rotus Oddiri now joins us from Washington, D.C. to discuss. Rotus, how's it going? Hope you're covering up. Hope it's not too cold. There were triggers for tepid global growth outlook from the IMF. Tell us more about this, Rotus.
Good morning, Rufai. Good morning, Benga. Good morning, all our viewers. Yeah, it is cold. 4 a.m. here. But look, we previewed this on Monday, right? When we gave a background on the back and forth between Trump and China, supply chain disruptions are one of the reasons why the IMF has lowered growth for the globe. And a perfect example is what we talked about on Monday with respect to China asking for new licenses in order to export rare earth minerals. Rare earth minerals, they are in this camera that's focused on me, your cameras in your studio, your mobile phones, fighter jets. I mean, they are very important, and China controls about 70% of its outputs. So, look at the front page of today's This Day newspaper, Nigeria's newspaper of record, where the Manufacturing Association of Nigeria is talking about its reduced contributions to GDP and how that needs to grow. I mean, if you are a manufacturing sector and you need rare earth minerals from China, that is going to halt your progress, right? So those are the type of things that they're looking at. And then, of course, the trade tensions. Trump, again, markets were seesawing yesterday. He's now come out and said he's going to put tariffs on cooking oil, coming in from China because China is not buying soybeans from American farmers. So all that, the trade is just, it's trade tensions, supply chain disruptions, and then also, higher interest rates, trying to get a soft landing from central banks around the world, labor market concerns. We still don't have the latest job numbers from the US. There's slow job growth in the UK. So those are a lot of the triggers behind the IMF's latest forecasts for global growth being slower this year and next year.
Yeah, you want to chime in? Benga, you want to chime in? You got a question for Rotus?
Okay. Yeah, Rotus, nice to connect with you from Washington, D.C. The IMF projection on Nigeria's outlook was more upbeat with 3.9%, even projecting a bigger outlook for 2026 with 4.2% projection. What's the justification for this?
Thanks. I'll refer again to today's This Day newspaper, right? The front page on Shell's final investment decision for the gas output that they're looking to, oil block, right, which is supposed to bring out about, cubic, was it 35 million or so cubic feet of gas, and then 60,000 barrels per day at peak production, that is supposed to be feedstock for NLNG, which is, going to support our liquefied natural gas exports. I mean, it's basically anchored on part of why we had 4.2%, GDP growth in the prior quarter, increased, oil and gas production. Basically, when oil is what anchors a lot for Nigeria in terms of our foreign exchange earnings and what it means for the rest of the economy. So, on the back of the reforms that we've seen, a forecast of higher, stable exchange rates, that is very, very important because that, of course, allows businesses to plan. You've seen profits rebound. But oil and gas has a lot to do with it, Benga.
I mean, great stuff, Rotus, as regards that. So, give us some details on this CBN listening party, if I can say that word, with the fintech. Was it sort of like a regulatory sandbox? And what went down in this party?
Yeah, listening party. Yeah, look, Rufai, it was, as you've mentioned, it was a closed door session. So unfortunately, we weren't able to bring, cameras in there. But I mean, it featured the big fintechs were there. Flutterwave, Money Points, Fair Money. They were all there, and Governor Cardoso simply just sat down and listened. I mean, he only spoke like at the end where he just thanked them and called them ambassadors of Nigeria, saying they are dominating across with their movements across into new African markets. But he just listened. They just passed the microphone around to all the Paystack was also there as well. All the fintech players, and one after the other, they just basically thanked the CBN for, as you've mentioned, the regulatory sandbox allowing them to grow in Nigeria. But then they also said, hey, look, we need to look at stable coins, for instance. They want regulation on stable coins to allow them to be able to issue stable coins. They talked about the stable coin. I know there's one company that is looking to issue, I think has already issued a stable coin that is, I think, linked to the Naira as opposed to being linked to the dollar. So they wanted to improve cross-border payments. The head of NIBS, the interbank settlement system, was there as well. They talked about switching and having more highways, interoperability between the fintechs and NIBS and so on and so forth. So it was a really healthy session, and they essentially just want the CBN governor said that there will likely be more engagements with the fintechs going forward. But I think, by and large, it was all about talking directly to the players in the sector and, listening to their concerns, how to boost growth for them going forward. There's a lot of exciting things to come in that sector. So it was really good to see the regulator sit down with them. And they also said, look, beyond Washington, D.C., these kind of things will happen in Abuja, Lagos, and elsewhere in the future.
That's good stuff. That's good stuff, because people in those sectors actually need to be heard. Benga, you're on the home run for this, Benga.
Okay, yesterday the IMF also raised alarm on the dripping revenue of developing countries like Nigeria. Can you hear me, Rotus? Yesterday the IMF raised alarm on the around revenue leakage in Nigeria, which is linked to illicit financial flows. This is also traced to untraceable digital transactions, stolen funds, and also proceeds from criminal activities, which they say it's eroding governance in Nigeria. Any solution coming from the IMF in this regard?
Yeah, you got to close loopholes, Benga. If you think about, and this is where cryptocurrencies come in, right? You have to be able to. KYC is very, very important in terms of knowing your customer. In fact, there was a discussion during this session yesterday with the fintechs and the central bank, by the way, on settlement of transactions, right? For not only transfers between individuals, but also P2P and then also B2B as well. There was a debate on the amount of time to allow for settlement. So they want instant settlement because the fintechs are talking about how they are competing with cash. If you hand me cash, that's instant settlement for a transaction between you and I. Meanwhile, if it is digital, there's a bit of a lag. And one of the reasons that was brought up was fraud and theft, because the head of NIBS was saying, hey, listen, you want to give a little bit of time for settlement to take place in case there are bad actors, which is with reference to these illicit fund flows and so on, to allow the funds to, so they want to be able to catch that. But then the fintechs are saying, well, hey, listen, it's part of a risk of doing business, and we have to tighten know your customers, not just for individuals, but also for merchants, in order to clamp down on that. So it was a healthy debate that they had, and so I on my part, I think settlement should happen instantly, and it's just a matter of tight. So it's basically a a process of tightening those controls, making sure you know who the players are, because it's a pool, right? And it's players within the sector that are carrying out these transactions. And so if you tighten those guardrails, then you can reduce the likelihood of this happening. And I know that Nigeria is, there's the whole matter with the grey list and so on and so forth. That's, hopefully going to be resolved in the future. So, it's a point that the IMF raised, and it was well noted.
Rotus, I like settlement to happen quickly, but if you've been scammed through your card, you will pray settlement does not happen quickly. You pray it's first docked in an escrow at a point in time. So that's another flip side. But thank you so much, Rotus, and stay away from the cold. Protect yourself from them.